everyone, and welcome back to Crushing On Podcast. We're here with season 6. We've got a new name, we've got a new look, and we kind of have a new vibe too. So, this season on the podcast, we'll be delving deeper into the topics that interest us. So, whether it be in pop culture, whether it be in social justice, whether it be hot topics that people are chatting about on the internet, we are going to give ourselves license to just delve right in and get deep into conversations. We also want to be asking the questions that we always wanted to ask. This is our time. This week we are chatting to Romantha Botha and Kim Windvogel, the creators of the Showmax docu-series Sex and Pleasure. The series takes a broader view of what South Africans get to behind closed doors and, well, everywhere else too. So this interview I did after the first episode aired on Showmax. So you'll see us make reference to the episode that it aired. But right now about 7 episodes have aired. So y'all have a lot to listen to. But the reason why I wanted to speak to Kim and Romantha was because I was so intrigued by the show. Because for the first time, I saw sex in South Africa through the experience of different races, different cultures, different religions, different sexualities, and spoken about so candidly. So in this interview with Kim and Romantha, we spoke more in depth about the show and the deep planning that went into creating it. Because a show like this, I mean, you can tell that it's, ages in the making. And we spoke about the intricacies of us talking about sex and the different conversations we have surrounding it. So this is our chat with Romantha and Kim. Hi, Romantha and Kim. Welcome to Crushing On.
Thank you for having us. We're very, very excited. It's our first podcast for the show.
Yeah, I'm also excited because I like the title, Crushing On. I hope you're crushing on me.
Yeah.
Hopefully the show, Kim. Hopefully the show.
Through the show. Kidding.
No. Yeah, that's exactly what the podcast is about. Be like crushing on what we are loving right now. So you guys have this new docu-series on Showmax called Sex and Pleasure. So
Mhm.
where did you get the idea from to start the series?
The idea started from watching a particular show that had similar content.
Mm.
But I just felt that there were so many gaps in there. And so my mind just started going, oh my God, what about this? What about that? What about religion? What about people from different cultures? What about people who are older and younger? So there were so many gaps in that specific show that I thought that South Africans really, really want to talk about it. And when I went on Twitter, I saw that everyone was commenting on it. But also they were commenting on it in a very derogatory way. They were sort of mocking the people on the show, and it felt like people's experiences were not really um, portrayed ethically. And so I really, really wanted to fill those gaps. And so I slid into Kim's DMs and I was like, yo, I like your work. I love what you're doing. Let's join forces and see what we can create. So then we further expanded on the idea, and Kim will tell you what happened after the
I
DMs.
mean, I saw the DM and I thought you were sliding into my DMs for another reason. And so,
Come
but
on,
then it was all about
Kim.
work. I thought
Come
I
on.
thought she was crushing on me, and the next thing I'm like, okay, fine, another work wife. It's my lot in life. But
Work
yeah,
it.
so I got this message, and I'm like, well, I've always been interested in sex. I work in the sex space. I am interested in the project, and I want to fuck shit up with Romantha and the expanded team. And so that's essentially what happened. And that's how we got to the point where we could make 8 1-hour episodes for our viewers, from parenting to drugs to spirituality and disability, and how that all links to sex and pleasure, and filling those gaps that do exist outside in the literature that is available to us. And so that is how this labor of love and lust was created for everyone to watch.
I think if we even go back to our planning phase, we probably had about 14, 50, could be 15 themes that we wanted to explore, but then in some instances we had to combine those things. That's how
Mm,
much content there is out there
Mm,
that we really could have explored, but we really were so forced, obviously, because of time and because of, you can't keep people, you know, watching for 14 weeks on end. At some point you are
you
at
could.
some point you are stretching it. Maybe you could, but so and that's why you just dip your finger in most of the themes and topics to get people to further talk
mm,
about it, because I know people are going to watch it and say, oh, but they didn't even really touch on this. And that's
Mm,
why we just want people to talk about, get the conversation going, so that hopefully, there's a season two, perhaps, maybe.
mhm,
We don't know.
mm,
But if there is, then that's obviously room to explore all of the things that people will eventually tell us we missed, or that they thought, they wanted to see
mm.
more of.
I think one of the things that I loved about this process, not just during production, but also now in post, is seeing how yes, we have these 8 themes, right, that weave in and out of sex and pleasure, but it's not a one dimensional. What I love about a docu-series is that it's not a one dimensional narrative of that theme. We took a theme such as
mm,
parenting, and we took a theme such as education, and we take you on all the various ways that consent can be violated, not just in the way that we speak
mm,
outside. We take you through all the ways that, people with disabilities engage with sex and understand it. And so all the themes really take a multi-layered sensation in terms of what you're going to learn.
Mm.
And so yes, you're going to feel, whoa, this is so much, but it's also going to continue this conversation that is so important in our country.
So how did you go about like getting this made? Like how do you pitch the show? Like to Showmax?
So at the time I was working for Idea Candy. So as you could have seen from the presser, I am a journalist, and I worked with Idea Candy, which is a SAFTA award-winning, multi-award-winning production company who really brought this to life. So along with the production company, we then came up with um, a pitch deck that is so along with Idea Candy, which is the production company that made this possible and made it come to life. Having a concept is one thing, but there needs to be a million things behind the scenes that happen. So along with the production company, we pitched for Showmax, and we also sent them a little bit of a teaser so that they can see the idea behind what we want to do. And a pitch deck is technically saying what your concept is,
Mm,
what themes you want to explore, who do you think might be in it, who do you think might be suitable, um, yeah, those kind of things, and maybe just a look and feel. So at the time, we had a look and feel, but that's actually the job of the director. That's Ayanda. So Ayanda came in and beautifully took that concept and created the most amazing, awesome narrative and thread for the concept that we created. So that's why it is both written by the two of us and Ayanda, because the entire theme, and as Kim so beautifully explained now, we take you through different journeys, and part of that is a collaboration with our director. So that's technically how it works. And once you pitch, you wait a while, and you try and forget that it happened, and then, yeah, and then you get the news. Listen, it's been greenlit, it's commissioned, and then the wheels start turning. Usually there's a month, depending on how big the project is, a month to 2 months of just planning, and then you jump right into it.
so okay, you guys said you had 14 ideas and you took it down to 10. So what kind of topics can we expect to be you guys to discuss further on in the season?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll take you through the 8 episodes. So the one that is already out there that came out on the 8th of
Mm,
March is parenting and education. Our second episode is all about love. We discuss love and sex, how are they connected? Our third episode is about sex and sex work, as well as the transactional nature of sex in general.
mm.
Then we have sex and drugs, and our episode title is called Pills and Potions. Who did not love that
I love
song?
that.
Uh, then we move into expression, how expression links to your sex life. What does that do
Mm,
for you? Then we talk about disability, we talk about age, and then our final one is on spirituality, which I think is going to be a very, very
mm,
interesting and also a very challenging episode for a lot of people. I must add, talking about these themes, we were sitting in the boardroom and we were discussing, well, how are we going to decide on our 8 themes, because we had themes like gender and sexuality. We had themes like the media. How does the media represent people of various ages or people with disabilities or whatever? So we another theme was the one about media. We were deciding, do we want to have a whole episode on how the media represents and also pushes certain narratives that might be harmful to a lot of people when it
Mm.
comes to their sex and their pleasure?
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to touch on as well is sex and the future. What would that look like with AI and technology and yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
but I think I want to touch on the first two ones that I explained, the one on gender and sexuality as well as media. We decided when we looked at our content list and the guests that we have, these amazing guests who are diverse, heterosexual, queer, whatever, we decided not to do that because there are quite a number of docu-series out there that have standalone episodes on gender and on sexuality. Our narrative and our aim was to not do that. We didn't want other people like that. We were focusing
Mm.
more on who are our guests. And if you are queer, it doesn't matter, or straight, you're going to go into the love episode. You know, you are going to go into the episode on parenting and education, because our representation is so strong, that we didn't have to do that.
Mm.
And so this is how we had to play that tug of war in terms of what themes are we going to do in a episode and what are we going to kind of filter through all of the episodes. And that was a fun journey for me.
A fun one, but also you feel like you're killing your darlings. You're sitting there and you're just like, oh my god, I really want this episode to be in. How can can we weave it in? So killing your darlings has been really really difficult for us, but I think it also just shows like how much there still
Mm,
is to explore and excavate
Mm.
from this topic. And sex is such a thing that connects us all, other than if you identify as asexual. It is one of the things that connects us all. We're all doing it, and we all know of people that are doing it, and we know our parents are doing it, but we just don't want to talk about it. Most of the time we all talk about it as well at bries or in our little girls pajama parties, or speak about
Mm.
it when we're alone in the privacy of our room. It's pillow talk, but never openly. And so for the first episode, it was very the feedback that we've gotten is I can finally sit down and watch something with my mom as an adult. And I'm hoping that this will open up the conversation between the two of us, because about 90% of our guests never had the talk.
Mm.
We didn't have the talk explicitly. And, I think it's about
mm,
time people address it. People just brush over it. And it's just a vicious cycle that repeats itself, because if we don't start, our children is going to have the same insecurities and shame and, shyness about sex and talking about it. I mean, Gen Z and the younger generations are always already, sort of more open, but there is a gap between the communication, parent and child communication, and we're hoping to close that, or
Mm.
at least start the conversation so it does close eventually.
I try to have the conversation after watching it with my mom, and she was like, "But I've always been so open about it." But she hasn't, and I think one of you
Yeah.
said like your parents went from like not talking about it to all of a sudden like casually talking about it. I feel like that's the what what happened with my parents. Like they never had the sex talk with me. I learned sex from TV.
Mm.
Like I will 100%. I know that for real. And then as I got older, they just started like making jokes and talking casually about it. And I was like, there's something that didn't quite,
the math is not
there's a
mathing.
misstep.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
math is not mathing. It's like when a lot of our guests mentioned in their anecdotal clips how, your parents never talk to you about sex, there's no conversation about sex, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, but now that you're married, you must make a baby. Then it's like this thing of like,
Mm.
okay, but wait, you never want to talk to me about sex, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to know how to make a baby and how to enjoy sex and how to do these things, and now all of a sudden it's very okay. So it's like the same WhatsApp group. It's like our parents go from 0 to 100, and you just don't know what to do with that content.
So you guys spoke about like the amount, like the different types of voices that you had speaking on the docu series, and that's what I found like really interesting. And as you were saying, like bringing in all the different voices in every episode. So I was like, I never thought about it from this perspective and that perspective and that perspective. So how did you go about, selecting voices for the series?
Ish, yeah. So Karen, it was it was a mengelmoes van baie goed. Okay. So
Mm,
firstly, we started off by having discussions with ourselves between the two of us because when this project started, it really was just me and Romantha. Our amazing director Ayanda was not there yet. We didn't have a producer yet. It wasn't, we didn't even have idea candy yet. It was just a
mm,
pipe dream, that we were hoping to manifest. So when we started looking at content and stuff, we were like, who do we know who works in a space, especially for me, I've been working in the sexual and reproductive health space for the last decade. So who do I know that I know this will be fantastic on this show? My colleagues that we
mm,
can bring on. Romy was looking at people that not only she knows, but also people that come through recommendation. So it was a lot of research. It was a lot of trust, but it was also a lot of we also don't know this person. This person came through
mm,
recommendation. This person is a person on the street, just a random person who is just a South African or a person living in South Africa, rather, who is open enough to talk about sex to the rest of the people in South Africa, and obviously those who have access to Showmax
mm,
on in other countries. So it really just started off with what is the idea and what gap do we need to fill, and then we started to do our research as to who can fill those gaps alongside us. And so that was another fun and challenging journey for us. And yeah, and so after we got our X amount of guests, we started shooting and editing, and that's how we came up with this show.
I think apart,
mm,
I just wanted to add to Kim. I think most of the people, yes, were like people that we know of in the industry. Perhaps maybe also not people we know in the industry because, you know, a
mm,
lot of the times people are sort of recycled in the media, and you get the same, repetitive opinion based on because they're an expert or they have studied this, and we wanted to give people a platform that's not necessarily widely known. Also, the other thing is some of the guests were purely based on what do we want to explore. So when it came to, for instance, fertility, we just had to do research because both of us didn't know
mm,
fertility experts. So we did research, we called around fertility clinics, we found someone to speak on it. So when it came to urology, for instance, both of us don't know a urologist. So we tapped into our resources and says, who do you think, would make a good urologist? Or we would just Google. So like Kim said, it was really a rock paper scissors with this thing, and and it really worked out. I think all of our guests, certain guests that we couldn't get on because of clashes with like schedules or calendars, it was unfortunate, but I do think the people that were meant to be on this documentary is on it, and it's jam packed with people, that's for sure. We shot so many people. I can't even give you the number at this point. I don't want to give you the number. Just see the variation of voices in each episode, and you'll see how much effort and, as Kim say, love, passion, and lust went into this
mm,
thing. Because we really lusted after the people that we wanted for this thing. We were like, please, please come on, please come on. But then, yeah, the best people ended up being in the documentary, and I'm so grateful for the ordinary people who broke the silence, because the experts, they do this
mm,
regularly, but it's the guy and the woman and the person who sits there and has to be vulnerable in front of a crew of people. I'm not even talking about the rest of South Africa. So yeah, big ups to them, because without them it was difficult as well finding people that we wanted in certain groups, because as
mm,
much as we think that people, so for instance, Karen, you say your parents say you've always been very open about it, but I'm sure you're not going to be so open about it if someone puts cameras in your face and ask you very intimate
mm,
details about your porn searches, or, what are your kinks and fetishes. Like, being open is one thing, and a lot of the people that were recommended to us were like, "Oh hell no, I'm not doing that on TV." But but off camera, they speak, and so it's the brave people. Yeah, they kicky with you, and that's
mm,
why you're like, "Oh no, they'll be great." But then when we ask them, they're like, "Oh hell no, I'm not doing that. My parents and my boss
mm,
is gonna see
Yeah,
this."
yeah. Especially to add to what Romi's saying, the 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 groups that we struggled in was men. I mean, kudos
Hetero men.
to the hetero men, heterosexual men, cis het men who came onto the show and spoke to us because that was one of the gaps that was quite hard to find. They would kick you with you on the phone. You're like, yo, you came to recommendation. We talked to them. We asked them about their sex life. We're like, okay, cool. And then we're like, so the offer is, do you want to be on the show? And they're like, and click.
Mm.
There's
No.
rewind, or like when we people would come to recommendation for our fourth episode, Pills and Potions. We're like, oh, we know that you
Yeah,
use
we struggle with that
certain
one.
substances, to increase your sex drive or your hardness or your wetness or whatever it may be. And people again, Kiki on the phone, Kiki on the emails, and the moment you're like, cool, so we're coming to your house next week. And we're gonna talk to you about how you're using sexual enhancers. And it's like, and like I changed my mind, né? Like
No,
it's not,
hell
it's not
no.
gonna happen. So those, I think, for me, in my
Mm.
memory, Romy can fill the other ones, but in my memory, those are the two groups that was
Mm.
quite hard to fill.
Yeah, people are not as comfortable as we think they are. But although we all know, and so I think that's why we opened with the first episode so that people can see it's a sit down chat, and that's how it should be. It doesn't have to. You don't have to sit there like a deer in headlights and answer questions.
Mm,
But yeah, let's have a casual conversation, and that
mm,
way you break the stigma about it.
Wait, Kim, I have to ask, like, you brought your
mm.
parents on, so I'm like, how did, how did that go?
It was not easy. Can I say, Karen? It was not easy to convince him.
Your da- your dad giggling was so adorable. I was like, oh my.
No. So I was very interested in doing it from the get go, right? But it was, I think, the longer it went on, like especially after we shot that interview, I started to get nervous, not for me, but for my parents. They're not in the space where they, are just like known to people, right? And yeah, so I started to get a little bit nervous. I think that's what Romy's alluding to. But the process of getting them on the show, firstly, my parents go through life not caring what about anything really, about what we do. We being me and my sister, they kind of just like go along for the ride because nothing that we do can really surprise them anymore.
But also, parents hardly ever know what their children do to begin with. You know what I mean?
Even know what we're doing in general. Exactly. So it basically just went like this: yo, I want to sit down with you and I want to talk about all three of our sex lives on camera, and about if whether you had the sex talk with me. And they just said yes, like they do to everything. And literally a week, maybe like a few days before the show went live, my mom was like, so what was that interview for again? And I was like, okay, I'm just, you know what? I'm going to send you the Showmax link. And if you watch it, you watch it. If you don't watch it. But, you know, all jokes aside, I, when I watched that episode and I saw that interview in the episode, it
Mm.
just came to me, that how, damn, you don't see kids, sitting casually, the adult kids I'm talking about, sitting casually with their parents, talking about their journey with sex
Mm.
and with pleasure through the lens of the way that their parents parented them in sex and pleasure. And so I was able to have this conversation on camera for the first time with my parents, where I'm like, yo, you screwed me over, but you also didn't. And so
Mm.
these are the types of conversations that we can have, and we can laugh about it on camera. We can reminisce and be nostalgic and be like, oh, that's what you said to me. And then we can also be like, okay, like in some part of the interview, my dad says, my advice to parents is talk to your
Mm.
kids more about sex and pleasure way more than we did, and be more approachable way more than we were. And so these were the kind of conversations that we were able to have just by sitting together for an hour. Obviously, we did it in front of the camera, but
Mm.
as normal South Africans,
Mm.
or people who are not going to sit in front of the camera, you can still do that. You can still have these conversations in an open
Mm.
setting with your parents, and try to see, what could you have done differently? What could you have done better? And where are we now? How do we view sex and pleasure now as adults? I'm 32 years old and I'm sitting next to my parents who are in their 60s. Awkward, but also fucking A. Yeah.
Mm. I think
Mm.
I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies when it comes to that, because even we have an awkwardness about bringing it up. So at most times we get awkward for them. We're like, no, I'm not gonna. They're gonna be awkward. They're gonna, and then you'll be surprised. You really, really will be surprised. So I say take a chance, sit them down, watch the episode casually, tell them, oh, I want us to watch something together, and then just dive right into it and see what happens. You'll
I
be
don't know. I don't know if
surprised.
I'll do that, but was there anything that you guys learned for the first time while doing your research?
Oh
Mm.
goodness, a lot.
Yo.
And each episode, I think with episode one, it was definitely the legalities around consent and sexual debut ages, and also what the law looked like previously before it was a little bit more inclusive, and it still isn't as inclusive as it should be. It's there's still some tweaks in terms of gender non-conforming terminology in the law, but there's hope. So, our legal expert Tanya Boardman tells us so beautifully that government is open to, create better and, more inclusive legal terms in order for us to all be seen when it comes to sexual traumas, getting justice
Mm.
in the legal system, and etc. So I think that for me was interesting. I viewed the first episode with a couple of friends, and I asked them, were you guys bored by the legal stuff? And they're like, no, that was the most interesting part. Like, really, really, I mean, legal jargon and legal stuff can be pretty boring, but Sanya's
Mm.
amazing. And I think also the way
Mm.
that we told it didn't make it a long winded thing. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that the reception was that, like, I wasn't bored. I wanted to know
Mm.
more. I wanted another episode on this. So yeah, that's what I learned from episode one. I'm not going to give too much away from the other episodes, but yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, as Romy says, every episode
Mm.
brought its own masterclass. Every episode brought
Mm.
its, dang, I didn't even know that. I thought I knew a lot, you know. Um, so yeah, I can't actually choose my or even remember exactly and pinpoint, but what I can say, for me, I work on feeling and emotion. And so I grew up Christian. My dad, he's an atheist now, but he was a deacon in the church. And my mom was also a big Sunday church goer, go to church on Sunday, etc. And so that's the type of household that I grew up in, especially in my formative years. So talking about sex was very much about you wait until you get married. My mom also waited until she got married. She's only been with my dad, and she's very open about those types of things. So it was never a thing of you need to wait, but there was this uh, not pressure. This is what I'm looking for. Expectation that was how it was going to be. You know, because of the word of God and because of what the Bible says and what our pastors or priests or whatever they are say. And so that was kind of how I always understood sex and spirituality. That is how it is going to be, especially when it comes to Christianity. I say this in every interview, but I have to give kudos. There is a reverend that's going to be on the show, Reverend CD. She is a Christian, but she is I'm going to call her an expansive Christian,
Unorthodox.
unorthodox. She studied sexology. She studied in the tantra space, and she studied theology, and she studied other religions and spiritualities in
Mm.
order to get to the point where she can come and say, this is what the word of God says, and this is how we can take from all of these schools of thoughts to be informed spiritual people. So the way that she speaks about, sex before marriage, we asked her about sex before marriage. I'm not going to tell you what she said, but that one sentence that she said to me, I was like, whoa, okay, wow, you just changed everything that I was taught when I was a kid about what it means to have sex before marriage. Um, there's some other things that she also spoke about in terms of gender and about sexuality that is completely unorthodox, but so affirming. I believe it's going to be so affirming to so many people, regardless of your sexuality and your gender
Because
expression. And so for me, episode 8, damn, I'm excited for people to watch it, especially here in South Africa. Yeah.
episode so we mentioned episode themes, but we didn't mention the names. And so Kim and I just really wanted us to go into that because I want people to take note of the witty characteristics that we tried to bring into it. We didn't want people to feel stiff and sit there with their back straight. So the just to run you through it, Kim, help me
Yes,
if I get it
I
wrong because some of
shall.
them changed in between. The first one, as you saw, was sex and parenting, and
Mm.
that's called Clueless. It's called Clueless for a reason because children generally feel like their parents don't know anything, and their parents generally feel like you should listen to me because you don't know anything. So yeah, the clueless element there. The second one is Sex and Love, and we did the honor of for of we actually honored Tina Turner in this one. So it's named "What's Love Got to Do with It?" And we asked the question, "What does love and sex have to do with one another? Are they interlinked, or should they be handled separately?" Third one is sex and sex work, and that one had a very specific title. And I think Kim and I, we were sitting there and we were like, oh my god, this title has so much history in it, but we wanted to create conversation around it, so we didn't explain it much. But I want people to go and read up the title for episode 3, which is Kaminakas Kaminakunte, and that just means no sex, no
No
cunt.
cash.
No cash, no cunt. Sorry, no cash, no cunt, and that just means no money, you're not getting anything. And so there we look at sex work, but we also look at the transactional nature of sex, and you'll see we dive into deeper things that might not be seen as sex work by some, but we ask the question: do you consider the sex work because of the
Mm.
transactional nature? 4 is Pills and Potions, and obviously it's Nicki Minaj's song, but that one is about just herbal, chemical, anything that you take, whether it's a glass of wine or whether it's a synthetic drug like poppers or, whatever you take, what gets you closer, to being in the mood. Uh, Number 5 is express yourself, and that one is linked to sexual expression, but also creative sexual energy and how that shows up in your life, whether it's in your work or how you express yourself in your hobbies, whether
Mm.
it's pole, whether it's painting, whatever that is. Number 6 is sex and disability, and that one is called willing and able. It's kind of self explanatory. The
Mm.
seventh one is age, and that one is obviously is it a sitcom?
So, oh yeah, we
Something's
call
Gotta
it
Give.
Something's Gotta Give. Yeah, it's a movie. It's that Jack Nicholson movie.
It's
Mm.
a movie. Something's Gotta Give. And then seven, well, that's seven, and 8 is I Surrender All. And obviously, it's the song, but also we want people to come and sit and surrender whatever misconceptions that they have, surrender all of your, preconceived notions, come and sit down and let's have this conversation. Surrender everything and join us in this conversation. So that's pretty much what we did, and we try to keep it young, and we try to keep it informative, and we try to keep it interesting. I hope people just see the thought and the energy that we put behind this project. It's not,
Mm.
every episode was chosen so specifically so that people can say, there's so many things, maybe I should watch it back because I'm going to miss so many things. And we encourage people to watch it back and even just let it play in the background just so that our streaming numbers can go up when we
It's like I was literally gonna
Shameless, shameless bitch, and I love it. You are shameless.
also just
Romy, Romy, is that what you are doing right now? You're
that's what I'm doing right now. Thank God this doesn't have video because you would see me play back my own documentary.
Mm.
No, but to be serious, what Romy's saying is so true. When you play it back, even me, like when every time I watch it, I pick up on something different.
Mm.
Because there is so much information, fun information. It's not, a lecture series, but
Mm,
there's a lot of information that's going to make you be like, damn, I didn't know about that. And then you're going to have to watch it again so you can really filter through that information.
So
mm,
I want to
Yeah.
ask, like, is there any plans to take this further than the show? Because I feel like, there's so much discussion topics, like just for people to have, open spaces in which they can talk about these things. Because I mean, as you've discussed on the show, South Africans are very conservative and, trying to break out of that, the stigma and all of those
mm,
things.
Yeah. From our side, from my side personally, I don't think that there are any imminent plans to, make these spaces happen for people. I think the point of the show is to create that
mm,
space where other people feel,
Mm.
okay, cool, let's have this discussion. Because remember, these discussions aren't new. Not
mm,
only the experts, but every person on this
Mm.
show every activist, these folks are already having creating these safe spaces in their communities. A lot of people are having these conversations on the ground, just
Mm.
not on a mainstream platform such as Showmax. And so what we can do with this, what I believe this project can do, is to bring in more people into the conversation. As you know, as you may not know, in the NGO space is a word, they always say, oh, we all work in silos. We all work so separately. Nothing is, we're not all connecting to and advocate for the same things or to get to the same goal. So how can we band our powers together to get there? A show like this, all of these folks came together. We created this show. Everyone put their best information and experience out there for everyone to learn from. And now that we've mainstreamed this conversation, and there is this literature that exists out there, we hope that this is a springboard for each and every person watching this to be
Mm.
like, shit, I still haven't had the
Mm.
sex talk with my kid, and they're 17 years old. I better get on it. Oh
Mm.
shit, I know nothing
Mm.
about sex work, but I actually think I've engaged with sex work before in my life. I didn't know that when that auntie gave me food or bought me a car or let me stay in her house for free while I was working or whatever, was me engaging with sex work at some point in my life. It's like, oh shit, I've done that before. I'm not a
Mm.
sex worker, but I've engaged with it. There was a transactional nature behind that. And then to have these
Mm.
conversations and to expand your mind and your brain on that. And I think, and then your community at large. And I think that's what I believe the importance of this show is. It's a springboard.
Mm. I agree with you. I
Mm.
absolutely agree with you. I think Kim and
Mm.
I, although Kim works in the space, Kim and I have thought to ourselves not to be the experts, but to come and be the curious explorers in this docu series. So we, along with everyone watching, asked questions that just maybe we might have known, but we wanted to be the viewer in the documentary. We wanted you as the
Mm.
viewer to have an opportunity to ask the expert questions that you might want to have asked, but you never knew where to go. And so yes, it is great to have the conversation on platforms like this that takes it forward, but ultimately we just want people to start the conversation. You can be the own not only you can be my English has just left me. Sorry. You can be your own conversation facilitator. You can be your own dialogue facilitator amongst your friends, with your
Mm.
family, with your children. You don't have to wait for someone like us to come along and have panels or even podcasts to have the conversation. Sit there and take the leap. It's really, really. Some of us are as clueless as the next person, and some of us know as much as the next person. So ask. Just ask.
But if you can speak to the listeners, why do you think, like, quick, this is the show that you should be watching?
I
Sex and
would.
pleasure.
No.
Oh, no, Romy, go. I'll wait for
No,
you.
go ahead. You were so passionate. Just start.
Thank you for seeing my Leo aggression planet. Um, Sex and Pleasure is expansive. It's an expansive show. It is going to cover a lot of things within themes. It's not one dimensional. It is fun. It's funny. The team who created it was fantastic.
Mm.
But over and above the team, the show itself is really, really good. And as I said, it acts as a springboard. If you want to know more about sex, even if it's just, I know it's something that we don't talk about. I know that a lot of us act discreetly. We don't want people to know what we're watching, etc. So even if you're watching it alone in your room, you don't have to have a watch party. You don't have to organize a talk. It is one of those shows that you can sit down and watch and be like, oh shit. You're probably going to be saying, oh shit, quite a lot. Or you're probably going to be like, oh, okay.
Mm.
And you're also going to be challenged with the things that you're going to hear. You're also going to be, okay, I'm being challenged here. And now I need to pause. I need to take a break and go make some coffee. And I need to think how I feel about that. You'll also be triggered. Now, I know the word trigger can be very negative. It can be something that is seen as I want to walk away from this trigger. But triggers are important for emotional healing, for sexual healing, for healing from trauma, for healing from a lot of things.
From
And so
shame.
it is going to, from shame, from the guilt that we're taught. So it is going to trigger you. It's going to trigger the good and it's going to trigger the bad and it's going to trigger the things that you did not know you were triggered by in the past. And I think that to me, this show is expansive. I should have left it at it is expansive and it's going to expand you. There we go. Klar. And as Isaac de Vries said,
Mic drop.
dis bevolk goed. Dis bevolk goed.
For me, sex and pleasure is a labor of love, a labor of passion, and a labor of dedication. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, we shot over 100, if it's possibly 150 hours of interviews. And so when you ask us about,
Sure.
our favorite this, or what did we learn, it was just a information overload for us who did the interviews. Every time after an interview, we'd sit in the car and we'd be like,
Mm.
damn. And then we would go into it and be like, there's so much. How do you cut? What do you leave out? So yes, labor of love, dedication, time, um, and then also for who it is targeted at, we try to throw the net wide. A lot of people might see voices in there and they're like, oh, this is a sex positive queer documentary, but it's not that. It is open to everyone on the spectrum, from conservative to liberal, from someone who's open and who is a naturist, which is also known as a nudist, to someone who's a conservative and who's in the church and who believes that sex should be for marriage. It tries to speak to everyone, and it tries to also challenge everyone. So even it challenges the conservative people as well as the people who are liberal and feel like they can judge people who are conservative. So we tried to throw the net wide with that one. And then lastly, I think, like Kim said, sex is not new. Let me just do that part again. Sex is not new. And so, what we try to do is have a new kind of conversation. Sex has been something that's been explored for decades. However, not in this way, not in a candid way, not in a sit down way, not in something that vilifies sex, but in something that creates a normal, easygoing conversation around sex so that you can shed all of the shame, shed all of the, you know, quiet whispers behind your hand when you speak to your colleagues. Did you watch that documentary? This is one of those that you can be like, oh my god, guys, who in the office watched that sex and pleasure documentary? It does get a little bit raunchy, number one, and I think the first two episodes are a little bit it lures you just enough so you can get to the good stuff. Like sex, it does take time. We don't just get wet for anyone and anything. So same as the show takes you 2 episodes to get to like the really really good stuff. So yes, all episodes are good, but if you're looking for sexy and raunchy, and we also put our bodies online, by the way, so you will get to know us very very intimately.
Mm. Damn, Romy, you want to make me watch the show?
So, okay, my final question. Who was your
Oh my
first celebrity
goodness.
crush?
Oh my god, I answered this in my video about squirting. On another project. Uh, for me, it was Sandra Bullock when she was Miss Congeniality and another Forces of Nature. She was with Ben Stiller.
Mm.
I watched Forces of Nature and Miss Congeniality over and over again, and then I would go masturbate. Like, and I didn't know it was. I was like, I'm like, oh, and I always thought it was for the male leads in my head because I'm like, I'm a straight baby. I'm 8 years old, but I'm straight.
Mm.
But then years later, you're like, the only constant celebrity in these movies is Sandra Bullock. So you are definitely a dyke. I can say that word because I'm part of the community, Nanil. So you're definitely queer. So yeah, it was more of a hindsight. So yes, Sandra Bullock. Mm.
Oh, if I have to remember, there was a couple, but the one that stood out was definitely Aaliyah. When she came
Mm.
out with Rock the Boat in that low-rise
Mm.
jeans and the crop top and the bandana, guys,
Me
I
too.
watched Rock the Boat so many times. Every time I just hear, like even now in my sleep, if I hear the first three notes of that song, I know exactly what song it is. It played in my house on loud. Yeah, that was definitely my crush. I loved her ever since, and I still love her. If I could get a hall pass for one day and bring someone back, it would be her. Now I'm both sad and turned on.
Mm.
Yeah. The the next thing we're just gonna see Romy quickly typing in rock the boat. He's typing it furiously looking for the music video after this interview.
But thank you,
Oh,
and thank you.
it was
Like
so
it's a
fun.
pleasure. It's a pleasure chatting to
Our
you
pleasure.
both.
Thank
I'm excited
you.
for everyone to watch
you.
to watch the series
We're
and
empty,
yeah.
Karen, next
please.
time
But
we're
yeah,
gonna
thank you
ask,
so
put you in the
much.
hot seat and ask you,
Yes.
what is yeah, we're gonna put you
No, no.
someone now. Favorite sex position, Karen.
No,
One,
no.
two, three,
One,
go.
two, three, go.
Time's up. Thank you. That was our chat with Romantha and Kim. Sex and Pleasure is an 8-part docu-series that explores different aspects about sex and pleasure. It is now available to watch on Showmax. And this weekend is Comic Con Cape Town. So if you happen to be listening on Thursday or in the vicinity, on Sunday morning, from 11:15 to 12 p.m. I, Karen, will be on the StreamerCon stage, which you'll find in the gaming hall, talking about going from podcast to vodcast and how video is impacting the podcast space. So, I mean, if you're there, if you have tickets to the convention is already sold out. So if you happen to have Sunday tickets, please come and say hi. Come in and hang out, come and ask questions, what ifs. But otherwise, if you are going to Comic Con Thursday to Sunday, we hope you have a splendid time. There's so much fun things I just went for a walkabout just to see what Comic Con looks like before it opened, and I was so amazed. Like, the entire convention center is full of pop culture things, artists, merch. There's gonna be celebs. We know that. There are like cosplay competitions. There's the gaming side, which I'm not as good at, but I mean I can appreciate a good game. So there's tabletop gamings. There is mobile games. There is of course your console games. There is an array of things, plus an amazing food court, and at the animation festival. There's so much going on. So if you happen to be listening to this before Comic-Con, I will see you there. I'll be there all 4 days. So, hit me up, tweet me, and say, like, yo, Karen, where you at? And we can hang out. But that is all from us this week. If you would like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/crushingonpod, where you can get some bonus content in exchange for a monthly financial subscription. Like, we are working on creating pop culture updates, our crushing ons through that. Chatters between Leanne and I exclusively for Patreon subscribers. So the Patreon helps us pay for our equipment or our subscriptions, and it also helps pay for the freelancers who create this podcast. To catch us on social media, you can find at Karen Welby on Instagram and at Karen Welby's with an S on Twitter. The podcast can be found at Crushing On Pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And you can find more information about this and all of our other episodes at our website, crushingonpodcast.com, and send any feedback to mail@crushingonpodcast.com. The show is produced by me, Karen, Rebecca Barches, and Leanne Phillipson. Our logo was designed by Nafifa Maroof. If you like the show, tell everyone that you can, any way that you can. Keep up to date with all our episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please rate and review the episodes on Apple Podcasts and apparently on Spotify now, as it helps others find the show. We'll be back soon with another in-depth conversation. See you then.